friends. Welcome to the grip module. Thank you so much for taking the time to look at this bonus material, because I want to throw out there what I think are some best practices to teach grip. Okay. Before I jump into my own kung fu, my own philosophy on that, which is by no means doctrine, I want to throw out there and put on the table, I think, some best practices for all of us as instructors and people in general to be open to ideas, to not get too carried away with what we've done for the last decade or decades, and grow this thing. Grow this thing so best practices are constantly being sifted to the top. We look at it like this. Let's look at lighthouses, stakes, and cones. All right? Kind of a funny Trinity mix, but there are some concepts which are just firmly rooted in place. We'll call those the lighthouses. All right? They are fixed in a good spot, and they're grounded, and they don't move very easily. All right? It's the implication. And that may be the safety rules. All right? The safety rules are grounded. There's not a lot of debate on moving those or what have you. Right? So that's pretty much a lighthouse. Now let's go back and look at some stakes. We put some stakes in the ground. Stakes they're pounded there. We placed them. We've set them as a marker, and it takes a little bit of effort. It's going to take something to move those stakes, okay? Because we feel we validated that, and our validation process is what we have to look at. But it can be moved. It can be moved, but someone's going to have to unroot us, so to speak, to move our stakes. Now we have our cones. I look at our cones as it's an area we throw out on the field there. We fly to it, and it's a general area where we go. It can be moved. It's probably an area we're not an expertise on. We kind of learn from somewhere else. Like, I'm not a tactics guy or room entry. I'll learn that from someone else. And I don't know. It's a cone. I'll relay it. I'm not a subject matter expert on it, but it's just it's not pounded in. So it's in one sense, we want to keep a constitution in place that we stand behind what we think, but other times things are somewhat flexible with different categories as to how firmly rooted they are. Okay, so that being said, let me talk about one of my stakes in the ground. It's grip. All right, grip. Let's start with an objective-based approach. What is an objective of grip? What are the two main objectives of grip? Well, I've come out with two. The first objective with grip is that our first shot, our first presentation shot, is consistent. So we look at the target, all right, we look at the target and boom, we send it, and it pretty much will land right where we're looking at. All right. Second objective of grip is the second shots. Not just the first shot, but the second shot. So that muzzle, as you can see every time, boom, it comes down to the same location, the same location, the same location. Now, if we desire that location to move, if we're tracking a target, yeah, it's different, but it's still the same consistent location based on our will to reposition that muzzle. Boom. So how do we accomplish these tasks? How do we get that consistency between first shot consistency and all the follow-on recoil management, the follow-on shots? Well, it's another consideration I'd like to put forth in grip. And as you can see, everyone out there, I like to do this in class, and I'll have a second video of how we demoed this in some classroom settings. But I have everyone say, okay, everyone, go ahead and put your fingers out and have your lower three fingers curl in, kind of like I have so. Okay. Now, for dear life, with your lower three fingers, grab them like you're grabbing a rope. Okay, so with those lower three fingers, like grab a rope. All right, boom. So your fingertips are tying in, and if you notice, look at my trigger finger there. So look at that silly trigger finger. See how that's moving in? Well, if we think about it, and as you know about trigger mechanics, well, we kind of want our trigger finger to be independent from our grip, right? And there's rules like you grip the gun with the 70-30 and all that. But I mean, let's think about it for a second. I mean, we don't want to have our grip strength and amount of grip pressure to affect our trigger mechanics, do we? I mean, we really don't. So let's look at it like this. Put your hand out. You can put it up like so, like this. And instead of doing a C-clamp grip, instead of doing a rope grip, do a C-clamp grip. We're grabbing it more like this, like a C-clamp. I learned this from Larry Yatch, a SEAL Mindset. I'll tell that story more in a second. But it's a C-clamp, right? A move about your big knuckles. Or you can say, look, wave away that sympathetic response or that co-contraction. That phenomenon of what makes our trigger finger move with a rope grip, okay? Let's go a little bit of theory on this. From what I understand from physiology, our fingertips are all connected to the same muscle way down in the base of our forearm. So we're kind of simple creatures, right? And we kind of grab like with full force with one big muscle. And if we're going to establish individual dexterity amongst our fingers, the antagonist muscles, the muscles on the opposing side of the forearm, have to contract at the same time to get the trigger finger separate from our other little fingers when we do a rope style grip. Okay, tracking? So, that's kind of problematic, right? Because you're doing this puppeteering act with your muscles. As you know, you get any kind of stress, even just a simple amount of time pressure to perform with a pistol and a firearm. You're going to contract muscles, you're going to do things. Well, it takes a long time to train that distinction. So it's a lot easier right off the rip to teach students to do more of a C-clamp grip. So when you do in that grip module, you can interject that, have everyone be hands-on and do that rope grip, C-clamp grip. Get them some buy-in on that. Then the people on the line with the certs, have them push straight back, and it looks kind of like this, where they're just pushing straight back. See how it just kind of pushes, just pushing straight back, and your fingertips almost float a little bit, right? They almost kind of, sort of, maybe, they're not really dived in. I look for white fingertips if they're really pressing on the side. I have a high flag thumb there, and it's really that simple. It's really that simple. So all you're telling them is a C-clamp grip. Just press on the front of the pistol. Just press on the front, let your fingertips float more or less. All right. Now, next block from a C-clamp is, of course, you want to be high on the gun. You want to have your V, a little bit of I call it flag thumb. I got from Mike Seeklander. I like that term. You keep your thumb nice and high, flagged, so to speak, like a little flag post, right? But look at this little cavity right here. See this nice little, not cavity, canal, kind of little V-shaped canal. Well, this is a great spot to take the base, as you can see, of our palm and fit it in there, okay? So it kind of fits in like so. So that cavity, boom, is fit with that support hand. Again, the support hand nice and really high on that pistol. So it looks like is that support hand, as you can see, is just behind it. It's not crazy behind it, but it's not like crazy back here, but it's just a little bit behind it. It's almost like this is kind of a speed bump on the pistol. All right, so I like to imagine, say, look, if you have a little speed bump here, and this is your vehicle, my hand, well, if it's a little light car, a little Prius or something, it's just going to go right over. All right, boom, nothing. But if you have a 10-ton truck really pushing on there some force, it's not going to go over that speed bump. We could push all day, and it's like, no, this hand is going to stay in place. Why do we want our support hand to stay in place? Well, a very common deficiency is support hand slippage in the course of firing. So now that big gap there, instead of be nice, tight, consistent, we go boom, 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 and you see this big, ugly gap. And that big, ugly gap, it's not consistent. The forces upon the gun are not consistent. The tracking of the muzzle back down to a consistent location will not occur, or not occur as well. Some people go to grip tape and things like that. I'm not a fan of grip tape because I think you can use it and such. I'm not a fan of it for correcting that deficiency because now we as a shooter are more accustomed to just that particular gun, our gun, with the grip tape. We haven't solved the underlying issue. So to solve the underlying issue of preventing that slippage, the support hand stays in place. I mean, we make that 10-ton truck from, let someone guess, chest squeeze, all right? So our chest squeeze, so our chest holds that support hand in place, all right? So like it's that 10-ton truck pushing it in place. And again, as you can see, and put it back up here, it's not a huge amount of engagement. We don't need that much engagement right here on the pistol. It's just a little bit. You're a little bit behind it. Like I like to say, wouldn't it be nice if there was a ledge on the gun our support hand can push against to stop it from sliding? Well, there is a ledge. It's the rear of the gun, just a little bit. Some people's hands don't fit behind it because they've got some meat paws. I've identified roughly about 5 to 7 different attributes to a thumb, just looking at so many people's grips and such, because I'm a grip Nazi. I'm just totally infatuated with grip. To me, it's the one thing that we can put a lot more attention and awareness on. And that's why I say it's a little bit more complex because I'm not saying this for everyone because, you're going to get someone where they can't get their hand behind it, right? And if they can't, well, then this isn't for them. So there's some branches in the plan as far as giving the information. So it's just, like I said, it's bonus material. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this course, but I want to get it out there. I want to get discussion going on this. So, but you understand the principle of what we're trying to do with that. Now, another thing about having the pistol, the support hand a little bit behind the pistol is as far as that first objective is the first shot, you're having a first consistent shot. I actually find when my support hand, that's my left hand in my case, when that's a little bit behind like that, it gives me what's called that proprioceptive feedback, that touch feedback for aligning that pistol, all right, just based on that feel. So that feel of that curvature gives me more of an indication of where that thing is aligned, where that muzzle is aligned, because that curvature to the base is always going to be consistent with the barrel for that particular model of gun. In this case, the cert has the functional features of a Glock 17 and 22. So the other term I've heard is a kinesthetic aim. I'll credit Rob Pincus for that. He has termed it kinesthetic aim out of kinesiology. And it's kind of a good technical term on that of how we naturally align that pistol based on that feel. And that's why I don't like to say natural point of aim, because it becomes unnatural because we train it. It starts out natural, and as we refine it, it's all of a sudden now, our unnatural, our point of aim. It's being silly. So, my friends, the only thing I've really told you as cueing points is you have to class do a C-clamp grip and chest squeeze. Okay, C-clamp grip and chest squeeze. I'm going to push the envelope and put my third objective on here, which I've naturally found I do, and this is more towards a performance grip. And I do a little bit of scapular pull. All right. Some of you out there are hardcore Weaver shooters. There's a raging debate. I saw Sleaze Weaver and all that, and I'm not going to jump in all that stuff. But but hardcore Weaver shooters, there's that pull sensation. There's that pull you have on that support hand. Theory being, if you can see, is that pull. It affects down here in the base. So like when you have that muzzle flip, it tends to help that recoil management. So the muzzle comes down in that consistent location. Okay. Well. I found myself doing this, and I just want to pass this on for discussion more than anything, so I can get some feedback. It's like, you're crazy, Mike. But a scapular pull, almost like, your scapular, your shoulder blade, has that little bit of pull. I found myself, when I was really doing well, just with the objective of trying to get all shots in an A zone at 20 yards at 2000 splits. That's my lofty objective. I think is feasible with a pistol, a Glock 19. Is I kind of pull with my pistol. I pull with a pistol with my. I don't bend my elbow. I don't get my brachioradialis and biceps involved, but just kind of this kind of an action to help get that almost Weaver-like pull on an isosceles stance. Feel free to steal this, okay? Steal this way of explaining grip. An important element on grip, as you saw in the main module there, is that they don't contract more muscles or less muscles when the boom goes off. The problem with a human interfacing with a gun, that 12,000 psi explosion in our hand, right in front of our face, is that we tend to, when that volatile type of activity happens, we tend to want to respond to that, right? I learned from Ken Murray, the founder of Simunitions. He said you have three fundamental fears. It's falling, loud noises, and things abruptly coming at us. The tiger jumping out, right, or what have you. Those are three fundamental, kind of visceral, fears, so to speak. Well, shooting has at least two of those three. And some of those horrific videos where they give the girl a gun and she falls on her tail, we've encompassed all three, right? Horrible. It's horrible. So how do we get the body and mind acclimated to the recoil, to the boom, which really comes a lot from grip, grip and stance. So we don't contract extra muscles, right? We don't do that extra muscular contraction when the boom goes off. As you saw in the other curriculum, I used the water bottle. I find that to be highly effective to do that in the classroom. It's really easy, okay? That's a phenomenal thing to get in the classroom, okay? But here's something you can do to explain that. Okay, listen, and I'll go into instructor mode now. All right, my friends, listen. Let's think of the front sight as a wild teenager and the rear sight as a teenager's home, all right? So here's a teenager, and here's her home. Now, we like to keep the teenager at home. And when she's at home, as we understand with sight alignment, the front sight is in between this notch, as you can see, and it's level and what have you. That's when she's nice and home, okay? But when the boom goes off, all right, when the sun sets, she goes out. She goes out, but we want her to come back home, all right? We know she's going to go out. We just want her to come back home. What keeps that teenager home? What brings her back to home? Well, it's a support system. It's a support system. The support system is what we're talking about. It's our good grip. It's our chest squeeze. It's all being locked in, all that isostatic contraction, all right? That's what ultimately brings her home. So what happens if we try to over-control this teenager? All right, we say, no, you're not leaving this house, little missy. Okay, does that ever work? Is in the history of teenagers, and has that ever worked? No, it doesn't. What happens? It's like, well, you try to over-control, you send her to bad places. All right, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We want to have confidence. You want to have confidence in your support system, right? Your chest and everything, your good stance, and everything we're validating with the water bottle when I hit the muzzle, and you just got to have confidence. It's going to be driven back home, because it's just this simple, my friends. You go boom, she comes back home. Boom, she comes back home. Boom, she comes back home, and don't come home pregnant. All right? So, you can carry on from there. Usually that kind of drives it home. That drives that point, and people understand. And it's a weird, probably brain deep connection. How we physically try to over control things, and emotionally in our logical decisions, we may perhaps try to over control things, each to our own perhaps detriment. So that is enough. I'm going to pump on this on grip for now. There's so much to discuss about this. And if you have any additions, pointers, anything you like on that, please feel free to call me and send an email, and we can keep this going. I will say that I came about the C-clamp grip, I said, from Larry Yatch at sealedmindset.com. He took our certification course. He's a Naval grad SEAL, super stud, and he came up with the C-clamp to get his soccer moms and his students to isolate their trigger control, and he just figured it out. And I'll be honest, at first I was skeptical. I go, look, dude, I have like 500,000, reps, with, clenching the heck out of it. I think I've isolated it. I gave it a full 4 weeks, and I'm not kidding you. I found it to be a huge improvement for me to isolate my trigger control, and keeping a grip. And I can go as hard as I want to grip or less. It's a very fungible way to engage the gun, meaning like I can grip it not hard or hard, and it doesn't interfere the trigger control. It's the other fundamental. Pretty phenomenal. The attitude for me to just accept it, try it, and it took about full 4 weeks I gave it, it put me to that higher plateau. So I always suggest that we all adopt that same kind of culture and attitude, openness, to reach that higher ground. As a parting thought on that, when I talk about in closing on the stakes in the ground, the lighthouses, and our cones, I like to look at our techniques and our tactics and our practices, whether it's shooting or how we drive a car or fill in the blank, anything we do, parenting. Our techniques are more of an archaeological find rather than raising our own little baby. All right? If it's an archaeological find, that's a very appropriate way to classify whatever we believe in as a best practice, because we found it. Okay, look, here's a rock and it's tied to this stick. This works good at mulching papayas. All right, it's good. Well, what are its limitations? Well, I pounded on a hammer and it breaks all apart. Oh, okay, so this primitive hammer-like thing has its limitations. We don't have an emotional buy-in, and we didn't really think of it. Someone else thought of it. Like in patent law, there's an old case. Only the Lord maketh something from nothing. So, everything we have, we've modified and what have you, and it's something else. But the problem is, I think we get too caught up in our own kung fu. And this is our baby. No, I came up with this. No, this test has to be right. I grew this. I expanded it. It's my son. It's my baby. No, we can't look at some of these practices with that level of emotion. I think we do it a little bit too often to our detriment, because the mind's like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And we tend to close off and not want to vet best practices out if we adopt that kind of that kind of an attitude of it's our baby versus archaeological find. So that's my philosophical point. Thanks so much for bearing through this bonus session. Again, any comments, please feel free to contact us.